Yes, please continue.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Dipanjan has got his Diploma of National Board in 2003. Regarding his experience, he is a senior public health professional with an experience of 30 years in health system and public health medicine, both in communicable and non-communicable diseases. Regarding to his publication, he has got 9 publication being as a first author, and has more than that publication. But as a first author, he has 9 publication. I've got 9 publication. Regarding his award, he has got many awards, more than 13 awards. Among these, I would like to read some of them. In 1985, he has awarded a National Talent Search Scholarship. In 1987, he has got Certificate of Merit, first position in AISSE. In 1996, Chief of Army Staff Commendation Card. In 2009, he has got Global Health Achievement Award. Currently, Dr. Dipanjan Roy is working as Chief Executive Officer at Lourdes Education and Health Society, and today he's going to present as a research on research ethics. So I will give chance to Doctor, and Doctor, you can start now. Thank you very much. You can unmute first.
Sir, you are not audible. No, please check your audio. Not audible, sir.
Am I here audible now?
Yes, sir. Right now, you are
Right now audible, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's good. So we can start. Right. First of all, Winderson, thank you very much for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here and speak to all the students. And I have very fond memories of working in Ethiopia, especially in Addis. I used to be part of the US CDC, and that helped me to. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, sir. Fine. You are audible.
Fine now.
Yeah.
Everybody's audible, right? Everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Okay. So it's a real pleasure to speak, and specifically I have been in Ethiopia and Addis for a good time, so in 2004 to 2008, where I served with the US CDC as part of the PEPFAR program. I currently am working for the Global Fund as the focal point for resilient and sustainable systems in health. So in the current, and without further ado, then let me take up this. I see a lot of students, and welcome all of you from different parts of the world. I see lots from Ethiopia and maybe other countries, as well as from some from India, some from Kenya. I see some people have mentioned their countries as well, so it helps us to find out and speak to you all. I'll start the presentations, and please feel free to stop me after every session, so that if there is something, we can always discuss back. I have session by session which is created for the ethics, which I'll be taking up today. So let's start. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen now, please? Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Is it full screen now?
Yes, sir.
It's full screen. Okay. So I'm sure in this last 3 days, you've had very good understanding of how research methodology is taken or how we proceed to research methodology with the understanding of epidemiological principles, with the understanding of different studies, with the understanding of so many things which come into being. Today, I'm here to take you to the very softer skills of the research, or in other words, the research methodology, which is ethics. Nothing in the world is more important than being ethical. You can do hundreds of research, I can do hundreds of clinical trials, I can do hundreds of things here and there, but it is of no consequence and in fact detrimental unless and until you uphold the ethics. So we will see today what are the ethics in medical research, the ethical principles in much great detail. So the broad outline which I will be talking today with the learning objectives, we'll just go through the learning objectives of the session to understand what we are about to learn today. And I have divided the whole presentation into origin of ethics, the field of ethics, the branches of ethics, the informed consent, and the practical application of informed consent and ethics in public health. So that's in a nutshell, which I plan to speak to you today. So without further ado, let me start with the learning objectives. So by the end of the session, I hope all of us who are there, including me, see, remember when we are presenting in certain places, it's all about teaching learning. It's nothing that one way, and it becomes a didactic lecture, and it becomes even more boring when I start speaking, sitting thousands of miles away and you cannot see, and most of you probably will go to sleep by end of about half an hour. So I do not want that to happen. So let's make it more interesting. I'll be asking certain few things and we could always, raise your hand and answer back. That makes it a more interactive sessions. Let's keep it interactive as best as we can. So at the end of this session, we together, that not only the learner, but the learner and the learning which are there, or both, all of us together, will try to understand what is ethics in medical research. So what constitutes that key word ethics? Explain the principle of ethical principle in medical research and also in public health. Remember, it's not only core medical research which we are going to do at all times, but also there's a public health research, and that also requires to follow the same ethical principles as we find in medical research. Then we are expected to understand how to develop a protocol for an ethical review. Whenever you put any studies or we want to do it, you have to get it through an institutional review board or some ethical committee which all the white head people, people with white hairs, with all the huge number of years behind their or the experience behind their back are going to look at your protocol and say, oh, this is not good. This definitely is not good enough. This is going to create problems, and they send you back. So again, the poor, principal investigator writes all the things and sends it back. So we'll see how we can avoid those principles in a practical way of developing correct protocol for an ethical review. And obviously, we would love to incorporate the ethical principles in studies and surveys as we will delineate. So hopefully this is for the next 2 hours we're going to have this session. So without further ado, let's go further. Let me first start with the big question. What is ethics? What do we understand with ethics? Well, ethics, everybody says, yeah, it's something ethical. What is ethical? Ethical is something we put, okay, we must respect the other person. Respect, yes, I understand respect. Why do you talk about ethics? No, I'm going to do some interventions on that person. If I'm going to do some interventions on that person, I must be respectful and also cognizant. What do you mean by cognizant? Also understand that person's problems, this thing, and putting in that same person's shoe. So in other words, ethics is nothing but an attempt to understand and justify the link between values. What are the values? The fundamental principles. And what is the fundamental principle? The principle of no harm. Please understand the fundamental principle, the number one principle in ethics is the principle of no harm. I am not going to harm my participants. That is the first and foremost thing I need to understand. And that's all about ethics. And how do I make it happen? My actions should be completely in line with my fundamental principles of no harm. That's all about ethics. So if somebody has to define and make you understand what is ethics, it's very simple. I have a fundamental principle. And what is the fundamental principle? The fundamental principle of no harm. And I, with all my actions, all my interventions, all my activities are directed towards protecting the participants. I just see a chat saying that, am I audible to all of you, please? Any
Yes, sir.
participants from
Audible.
the other countries?
You're audible, sir.
Anybody who's not able to hear me?
Sir, it is fine. Fine, sir.
Okay, from Kenya, Dr. Odolo. Fine, fine, great. So I think if there's there, please type out on the chat. I can always repeat what I'm saying. When I have to define it in terms, see, definitions are very important, because that's got lovely English words, which makes it, understandable and things. So what's ethics? Ethics is defined as a systematic study. We always in, research methodology, we use a very good English words because it tells you that we are, way above other people. Abel is saying it's not audible to me. So Abel, can you, because others are able to hear you, so please, can you look at your audio so that you can hear it better? Anyway, we'll start again. Ethics is defined as the systematic study of morality. Refresh. So aren't you able to see the presentation? It's showing the same one. It's okay. Anybody else who has a problem? We can. Okay. So ethics is defined as a systematic study of morality. Now, what's morality? Here in medical research or research for that matter, it's primarily the simple thing of no harm. So here morality means I'm looking at the person to be respectful. I follow all the respectful principles, and most importantly, the fundamental, the first principle of no harm. Develops ethical principles, these rules and ideals that spell out standards of what is good and bad. What is good? Subject this particular participant to fire. Just put the person on fire to see if the person dies quickly. I'm doing a research study. Is it ethical? That is definitely not. It's intended to do harm. So I cannot be ethical in that. So no ethics can pass that particular studies. Have you understood the concept of what we are trying to say? It's not only the principle of morality, but it's the principle of no harm. So it has to spell out everything, what is good and bad, what is right and wrong. Okay, so that's important. So identifying the ethical principles. Listen to audible, doctor. People are unable to hear.
Dr. Dipanjan, just raise the volume a little, maybe.
Okay, I'm raising as much as possible. Let me quickly see.
Yeah, but you are audible to us. At least I don't know. Some people may not actually hear it, but
Let me
you are
quickly.
Yes, sir,
completely
it is
audible.
fine. It is fine
It
if
is
audible,
someone,
okay?
absolutely
some
fine.
participant, if one participant have a problem, that may be due to his network problem from his side. So all the things are going fine. If someone have a problem, I have shared the link of live streaming. He can join at that link. And voice is very fine, sir, from your side.
Also, just to add, we will also share, what you can do is, if you could kindly share the presentation after that, right? You can share the presentation with all the participants as well. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. So let's start. So in ethics, we identifying the ethical principles to guide action, analyzing and evaluating the rightness or the wrongness of particular actions. And obviously the ethics asks these fundamental questions. What choices should we make and why? Please follow the principle of no harm. So When you make a choice in any research study or any public health settings or any settings of the nature forensics methodology, you must ask the question, should I do it? Yes. If it is okay, is it going to cause any kind of specific problem to a participant? If the answer is no, please go ahead. So what choices should we make and why? And what moral norms should we guide our actions? Please understand, sometimes we come from a different country, different perspective, different culture, where things may be completely different. And come to another country and start, putting our own principles and practices into place. Oh, I can ask anybody. I can, go and ask a very leading question. Let's give an example of, say, I want to do a study in HIV. Okay, so I can just go and do a study of HIV/AIDS and start asking questions, very intimate questions to people. Definitely, it is not part of something which we would like. That's ethically wrong. So that's about ethics. So this is in a brief about what is ethics and all. Now let's start with some of the history of how we have been able to get, or what is the origin of ethics. So let's look at the origin. The word ethics came from the Greek word called ethos, which means a set of moral principles. In other words, we are going towards more of morality. And what is the morality? The principle of no harm. So that's the word which is the origin of ethics has started. The term ethics usually refers to moral principles, guiding conduct, which are held by a group or even a profession. So this is the definition given in 2000 by Wellington. It's the 54th edition of the ethical principles of public health and medical research, which speaks about this. Ethics are always are ways of understanding and examining moral life or of right or wrong human conduct. See, ethical principles we try to follow as best as possible for human research subjects. Please also understand there are ethical principles we need to follow even for animal studies. So it's not that we can go ahead and do anything we feel like, but we will have to define everything in terms of good ethics. So what does ethics really have? And when I look into ethical things, we look into integrity, we look into morality, we look into the principles, we look into the honesty, the rightness, the fairness, the responsibility, the conscience, the choice, the honor, and the value. All the good English words which primarily are going to be synonyms for respect, etc., constitutes the ethics. So that's about how the ethical principles or ethics origin started. Definition of morality. Of course, this is the definition which we follow commonly with any society or certain things. What is morality? The brief and standards that are good and bad, right and wrong, and that people actually do and should follow in a society. That's morality. Ethics is defined as a systematic study of morality. Whenever you bring a scientific principle to anything, it becomes ethics. Not anything, sorry, it becomes more of a science. But when you bring scientific principles to morality, it becomes ethics. That's about it. So systematic study develops ethical principles, rules, and ideas that spells out standards of good and bad, right or wrong. As from one country, I cannot go to another smaller and a very poorer country and start pumping in some medicines which I know is going to be definitely harmful. There is an ethical barrier to it. But unless there is a committee which prevents from doing it, I will just get away and say, I have used the ethical principles and call it. Please understand, morality is well defined, or ethical principles are defined as per the country, as per the population, as per the culture, as per the tribe, as per whatever you want to do. Wherever you're doing, you must follow all the principles. That's the principle of no harm and principle of righteousness. That's very, very important. So deciding what we should do, what decisions are morally right or acceptable is very important. And that's based on local principles. Explaining why we should do it, how we would justify our decision in moral terms, very important. And so it has to have a dialogue with the population you are going to do the research, describing how we should do it, the method or the manner of our response when we act or our decisions. So this is how you actually implement the concept of ethical principles. Morality refers usually to the first order beliefs and practices that are good or evil and guide our behavior. Again, remember why we are stressing into morality and all these things in such a big manner is to make you understand that whenever you are practicing, even in a country, there are many provinces. In the many provinces, there are many ethnicities. They all follow different moralities. For example, in a country, one of the community A follows a certain principles and community B follows certain principle. I developed a research protocol with ethics for community A may not be applicable to community B. So morality must be taken into account. It's more cultural belief, more of what people values they have defined. So it is very important. So made up values and duties which are either self-imposed or imposed by others. In other words, the community. Ethics is a generic term for various ways of understanding and examining the moral life and morality. Therefore, ethics is a second order, systematic, reflective consideration of our morals, beliefs, and practices. So that's origin. Now let's delve into having understood what is ethics, having understood how ethics has come. Now let us expand our view a little bit more to understand the fields of ethics. This is where we are coming slowly from only words to more science. So let's go to field of ethics. In the field of ethics, we have these kind of ethics. Ethics is, though we say it's ethics, but it has got a subfield of bioethics. There's a field of clinical ethics. There's a field of research ethics, and there's a field of public health ethics. We like to expand, to make people understand. We have to, look at various sub specialities of the ethical things. It's quite a big, interesting topics. But let's start and understand what is bioethics. The study of ethical issues brought about by advances in biology and medicine. So it's brought about by biology and medicine, whatever we are bringing in bioethics. Great. What is clinical ethics? Analysis of ethical issues and dilemmas in clinical practice. Should I give this medicine to this person or not? That's clinical ethics. If I give, there's not of harm. The person may have a kidney failure, but the person is suffering. If I don't give this medication, the person will die of pain, or maybe having a cardiac arrest because of pain. So clinical ethics, again, the thing comes in. Research ethics is what we are going to spread out today, which is the protection of the research subject. In other words, the research methodology. Will delve or detail out this one. Public health ethics is the practical decision making that supports public health mandate. So public health mandate, like any practice, obviously goes into. So we'll have this research ethics and the public health ethics much more detailed in today's presentation. So coming first to the public health ethics, which is also the similar. I've used the term public health ethics, but just to make sure that you understand that it can be used as a broader aspect as well. It's the same thing holds good for research methodologies for even a research study. So public health ethics, what is it? It's the application of ethical principles and moral norms in public health practice. Okay. Study of moral norms that should guide public health decision making, a process of identifying, analyzing, and resolving ethical conflicts or tensions in public health. There are lots of things. As you know, that public health principles it helps the majority. For a single person, it may not help. It tries to help, or it's beneficial to the majority. That's public health. So public health is about community. So here ethics comes up. If I'm using a public health principle, okay, for only giving, say, let us take a very simple example in COVID-19. When you had the COVID-19, what was the first thing that yes, we had the lockdowns or, kind of quarantines or certain amount of primarily putting people into a confined space and having safe distances so that things don't spread out. In other words, life came to a standstill. Now, that helps the majority? Yes. From the government's point of view, yes, because it's going to bring down the death rates, it's going to bring down something which we did not know earlier. But from individual's perspective who earns a daily wage earner, that means if he doesn't go to the market to sell certain products, is unable to get the food and get it. Maybe completely wrong. The person may die of hunger because he's unable to sell anything and unable to get the food that is required. But that is public health ethics. Public health ethics is the beneficial for majority. So most people will benefit, some may not benefit. So that is the principles we also look at in a larger aspect. So ethical consent, this is the tension in public health. So let's look at what is the classic difference between individual ethics and a public health, which is a collective ethics. That's also one needs to understand. So individual ethics is also referred as clinical ethics. Okay, so let's look at the classic differences between the two. Clinical ethics focuses on individual patient-provider relationship. When you look at patients and others, you follow up with them. It could be a doctor-patient relationship. It would be a counselor-patient relationship. It could be a whatever, kind of nurse-patient relationship, whatever it is there. It focuses on individual patient relationship, tries to keep it confidential, whatever, etc. Public health ethics is not about individuals. It focuses on populations, institutions, and communities. Clinical ethics, individual liberty, autonomy is of paramount importance. Principle of no harm, principle of no disclosure, non-disclosure policy. But in public health ethics, it's interdependence on people. For majority has to be good. If there is certain people who have infectious diseases can kill other people, it is a moral duty of the provider to make that person known and quarantine that person. Though individual liberties are being curtailed, you are actually confining the person. In other words, you are imprisoning that person, in the lack of other bigger words which I'm going to use. So it is just putting the person into a quarantine. Unfortunately, the individual liberties are being curbed, but that's okay as far as public health ethics is concerned. Whereas in clinical ethics, that is not okay. So where are we putting it is an important issue. Authority is vested in prestige or physician or medical profession. Authority vested in police powers of the state. Look at this particular thing. And I wanted to highlight this in the event of the COVID-19 pandemic, which you have all seen. Each country has faced it. Look at how public health ethics was used to justify any of the things which has been done. Whereas when you look at individual or clinical ethics, it would not be correct. Patient consent is of vital importance in clinical ethics or any of the research methodologies which we are going to do where individuals are concerned. Societal consent through political process and public engagement is very important for public health ethics. Beneficence and non-maleficence, that's very important. Our principle of no harm for a single individual, whereas in public health ethics, social good for the majority, avoiding social harm. If 1% and 3% or 10% can be quarantined, we can save millions. It's much better. Justice for the individuals, and in public health it is equity and social justice. So these are the few principles and policies we follow between individual ethics and the public health ethics. Some of the other key issues, let's look at it. Disparities in health status, access to healthcare, and the benefits of medical research are always key issues which we have to look at ethical principles. There are certain people, because of their health status, they may be cancer patients or certain people who are disadvantaged groups, their access to healthcare is poor, and we are trying to do some study and trying to look at things that may not be a very appropriate thing. If you cannot do anything good, and just by asking question to satisfy your scientific curiosity doesn't lead you anywhere. So this is where the ethical principle steps in and says, sorry, please do not go ahead with the study. So benefits of medical research must be given to the participant. That is the first and foremost principle with an ethical principle which comes in. For example, questions about resource allocation depends in part on value judgments about the relative importance of small improvements in quality of life for a large proportion of population as compared to a life-saving intervention that would benefit only a few people. Classic example. You want to put up a big cardiac replacement or cardiac bypass surgery center, which will benefit a few cardiac patients who are there, or you would like to improve your primary health care, which would help out a large variety of people with various ailments. That is another ethical decision which also needs to come into being. So these are the key features of public health, your ethics, as well as the research methodology which we use at all times. Responding to the threat of infectious disease. I specifically put this in view of the COVID-19 pandemic, and you can see how we look into the ethics part of it. The responding to the threat of infectious disease, effort to contain the spread of infectious disease, raise difficult questions. Very difficult questions about the appropriateness of restricting individual choices to safeguard other people's welfare. If you are having COVID-19, I'll put you into quarantine. Your civil liberties are completely curtailed. Ultimately, the rights given by the constitution of any country to the citizens of that country is being curtailed for an individual who's got a COVID-19 in certain cases. So, but unfortunately, we have to agree because it is for the welfare of a larger code of population. That is social ethics and ethical principles in larger terms. Example, use of isolation and quarantine in tuberculosis and pandemic influenza, and obviously COVID-19. I used it even for tuberculosis, which is done in many countries, as well as the pandemic influenza, and now, of course, without a doubt, and without those saying, of the pandemic COVID-19. International cooperation in health monitoring and surveillance is always the case, and ethical principles are also debated at various. We talk about the Helsinki Principles. We'll talk about those. It's got, the principles here. We have got the Belmont's resolution. There are so many things we'll see and how it came to ethics. Those are important ones to understand. Then we will see the how we make a protocol and a proper application of the whole thing. So international cooperation in health monitoring and surveillance, the implementation of international health regulations reflect the commitment of countries to collective action in the face of public health emergencies. Specifically, we use in this, we saw huge cooperation in terms of pandemic. This COVID-19 pandemic, which we have just facing till now. See a couple of things. Can you all hear me? Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Anybody? Okay, thank you. Defining the scope of countries' obligation to act collectively and determining how those obligations should be enforced will inevitably raise difficult ethical dilemmas. Each country faced this problem, that should I or shouldn't I? Then they took a decision. Sometimes, let me talk about, there are many, most of the countries adhere to something called as lockdown or large country lockdowns or phenomena called as quarantine for the whole country. However, there are certain countries like Sweden which never adhered to anything of any closure at all. They said, no, our individual ethics or individual liberties are much more important based on our morality of the Swedish people. So we will not adhere by it. We are agreeing, and we agree to have more deaths which are there, or people who could, and they would be good enough, or the people can follow the individual practices of personal protective equipment or COVID appropriate behavior, but otherwise will not do it. So these are difficult ethical questions just to bring to the fore. Exploitation of individuals, yes, very, very common. And I'm speaking to people here in Africa and so many countries, I'm sure, and especially Ethiopia, others, you've all seen in the past how there were lots of clinical trials which was done which did not have the appropriate safeguards or the ethical principles to safeguard our own participants of the country. But slowly and steadily, each of the countries came up and said, oh, this is not correct. Let's have the ethical principles in place, and they had, so this is very, very important point. Exploitation of individuals should never be allowed. It has to follow the ethical principles. Current practices in medical research, for example, may expose participants to significant risks without a benefit for themselves or for the community. There has to be, if I am sacrificing my life for the sake of medicine, I expect to be compensated, and I expect that I should be given a proper informed consent so that I understand all the risks and benefits. It should never be done by telling me, oh, everything is good, 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 good. But when I take the medicine, I die. That's not ethical principle. That's not ethical. Classic example is an area of organ transplantation. The growing practice of transplant tourism exposes individuals living in poverty to significant health risks. I need a kidney transplant. I can't get it in my country because people are not willing to give. I don't get a donor. I go to a very poor country, offer, say, $5,000 and get a person, a lovely kidney matching. And I also enjoy what is called as a transplant tourism and do it. ethically absolutely wrong. And that's how the crackdown on medical practice and the way of how individual or clinical ethics came into it. So this transplant tourism, especially in the late 80s and 90s, was at paramount. That caused the whole world to come with more practices on ethical principles. Health promotion in this is wonderful. Ethical, always a good ethical principle to promote health, to speak and give you the correct information so that you can deal better. The growing public health threats of non-communicable disease. This we are fully aware, say cardiovascular diseases, the principles of smoking, poor diet, lack of exercise, all those problems which causes either the, let me take 2, 3 non-communicable diseases. First is, hypertension, which is a very important one in most of our countries, especially our developing countries, which are growing with impudence at all times, along with the communicable diseases. Second is obviously the diabetes, which is also equally, going up in this manner. And third is the cancer, which is due to many lifestyles. And these are all the lifestyle diseases which are coming into being. So whereas if we are aware, we should make our population also aware. That's a classic ethical principle also to be followed. And whenever a research is being done, any research study which follows these must have an awareness or health promotion concept so that the participants who participate in any hypertension study for anything must be given a complete repertoire of hypertension so that the person can also, and certain amount of capacity building needs to be done so that they become your agents who can spread awareness around. So that is also one of the ethical principles which has been now engraved in any research studies. So in a nutshell, let's look at what is the ethical issues we have spoken about in public health or research methodologies or in this thing. Is the responsibility to protect society? Definitely. Responsibility to the individual? Yes. Individual versus community rights. Here's a debatable issue. Individual rights? Excellent. Yes, we must follow. But when it interferes with a larger population rights, then we may have to choose, very unfortunately, the larger population, or in other words, public health ethics, the community rights. It's very important that actually we speak with the both. Government responsibility, sometimes corporates who come in, big pharmaceutical companies, etc., which come in, they also have responsibility. Do not forget the universal health coverage or the right to health care, the WHO's fundamental principle of right to health care. Then there is also a personal responsibility. Like when I'm in a research study, it doesn't mean that I don't have any responsibility. Everything is of the research persons. It's not for me. No. We are making you aware. We are giving you all the details. It is also your equal responsibility for self-care. For example, if I'm using an anti-cancer drug, which causes a lot of problems of the throat, the mouth. This is like erosion, or there is more of glossitis or any kind of mucositis of the mouth. Itis means it is more of inflammation in the mouth, which can be caused by any of these high level or anti-cancer drugs, which is going to be used in chemotherapy. If that's the case, I have also requested the participant to use certain mouthwash, which will diminish or lower the expected adverse effects. Supposing the patient does not follow the principle, only takes the drug and then comes back and starts crying, I have this, I cannot eat, I cannot do this, I cannot do that. My first question to that individual is, sir or madam, did you do how I mentioned to you? Did you take the mouthwash 3 or 4 times a day to make sure that you have lesser adverse effect as we explained to you during our whole informed consent and other process? The participant says no. There is the point of personal responsibility. You do have personal responsibility as well. Please make sure that it is not our responsibility alone. It's a responsibility of a collective nature between you, me, and us. It's all about us. That's more important. Quality of care also has to be of that importance. Yes, whatever we have given you is probably the standards of care as laid down across the globe. So this is where we go into any research, the ethics, requests for the quality of care, which has to be of international standards. And most important, freedom of choice. Classic example. I am going in for a research study, which entails studying family planning devices, different kinds of family planning devices. We may have a condom, which is there. We may have an oral contraceptive pill. We may have a diaphragm. We may have a gap or some other principles like, the intrauterine devices. All great. Somebody and I wanted to make it a randomized control trial so that some, women take this, some men, take this. And there is also a men principle. We have used gossypols and other anti-sperm agents which could be used. Unfortunately, when I look into this, I find that in my area, which I'm talking about, specifically the diaphragm, they're very less takers. Now, I'm worried about my study because my study needs participants. Each arm needs participants. You all studied, I think the principles of clinical trials have already been taught to you yesterday. So yesterday or day before, I suppose. So you have seen how randomized controlled clinical trials have different arms. Okay, so when they have a non-crossover trial, which is there, so when you're looking at those trials, you're looking at the numbers which are there, but your diaphragm doesn't have too many participants. Then you start asking, oh, no, you please take diaphragm. I don't give the choice. Whereas the lady was never wanting to take a diaphragm. Completely wrong ethical. There should be a freedom of choice. You explain and do not lead them. That is ethically wrong. Freedom of choice. And very important. As we progress with our trials, and I find that something is going wrong, stop. Stop the trial. You are duty bound as a researcher to stop the trial. That is the ethical principle. Acting on evidence versus not acting. You will say that, no, I don't want to act. My principles, my ethics are very strong. And why to tell these pure participants, let them die. I will get my next Nobel Prize. Very wrong. You cannot build castles on dead bodies. Please note, principle of no harm. You have uphold the basics of public health. You have to uphold the ethical principles of public health. I hope the concept I have been able to make clear till now. So is this clear? I'll pause to take up any questions because we have taken up something. We have lots of participants. I know we have time, so we are doing decent on time. I'm timing myself as well, so it's okay. I can take up, if that's okay with the moderator. If anybody wants to ask a question or something. If not, I can go ahead and then, we could take up the questions all at the end. I know it's a long lecture, so what happens is you may forget. Our attention span doesn't remain very long, especially keeping all of you adult people engrossed into certain things takes. And when I'm not in front of you, I was in front of you, you would have, I could have shown you so many other things to keep you more engaged. But it's okay. If there are no questions, we can always go ahead a bit. So I'll just quickly go through some of the bioethics and others, like history and all, and just give you a brief background of how the ethics on research, specifically research, came up in the ethics on human subjects, when we were doing the research. Until Second World War, there was no serious debate on ethics on human subjects. You could just do anything you like. I, as a researcher, was, omnipresent, omni-powerful. I would be the god. And I would say, you do this, and you would be, as a subject, will be very, very grateful that, I have given you something. Unfortunately, the principles of no harm was replaced by principles of all harm. So that is definitely not the issue which we wanted to, put up there. So we looked at till the Second World War, there was hardly anything. Then they started using this as, the world became a smaller place and people started using it. The ethical codes for research that guided the early investigators were often based on norms and values of the dominant society. If I am the ruler, I make all the rules. Others who are not rulers have no say. So what I think is right for everybody. Is right for me means it's right for everyone. And that's exactly what the ethical codes were in the initial days. However, unethical trials carried out by human beings by German scientists when Hitler was, raging from the Axis side, they had done, as you know, with the Jews, all those Nuremberg trials and camps and all those concentration camps had everything. So if I wanted to test a new weapon, test it on these people. If I wanted to test a new drug, test it on these people. Let them die. They're as such expendable. I'm not going to waste my bullet on doing that. Right. So that's how, which was the whole principle which came into being when millions of people died due to, and they died very poorly. That's what helped us and understand us, make us understand that we as human beings, we have to uphold certain standards. We are basically human beings. We are not butchers. We are not, devils of the known world. It's not that way. We are humans. That's important from the bioethics history. So here is the perspective, the Nuremberg War Trial, 1947, criminal proceedings against 23 leading German physicians and administrators. Can you imagine that there were 23 such leading German physicians? These are all people who have taken the Hippocratic Oath, and administrators for willing participation in war crimes and crimes against humanity. It was unthinkable proportions of atrocities which were committed on people there. Horrifying procedures were conducted for research purposes on 1,000 concentration camps. Cut their hand off and see if it really regrows. I'll put a medicine. What kind of trials are that? That's exactly what happened in the UN. It's written in the UN system. You'll find that when you, if ever you all get a chance to go to Geneva and see the UN world, you'll see these things in the Nuremberg war trials and all those repertoires put up there. It's unthinkable proportions of what was happening. But let's not forget that it was not only done in the German, because it's a larger one which we thought, but same thing happened in US. The syphilis study in Tuskegee, which we had in Georgia, was 1932 to 1972, 50 years trial. Again, lot of things were flouted. Let's look at it as a part of research project conducted by the US Public Health Service. Okay. 600 low-income African American males, 400 of who were infected with syphilis, were monitored for 40 years. So for 40 years, they were being monitored who had this syphilis. Okay. Free medical examinations were given. However, the participants were not told about their disease. You have hidden the disease from the participants. Why? Because I wanted to see the natural history of the disease. Great. I wanted to see the natural history to make my career go up like this. But at what cost? So many people died. I could have used the medicines. I could have told them. I could have told them not to do certain things. They would have not spread the disease. That's ethically wrong. So even though a proven cure became available in the 1950s, the study continued till 1972 without a single participant being given any antisyphilitic medication. This is the famous study which we quote in ethical principles, quoted everywhere across, when we see the syphilis study of Tuskegee, which is really, really a wrong thing. It's written, documented, and we put up. So these are the historical perspectives of what we need. So look at this more details. In some cases, when participants were diagnosed with having syphilis by other physicians, researchers intervened to prevent treatment. Even when the person went to another one and they said, no, you are having syphilis, we'll treat you. The researcher said, no, participant of this study, you cannot give anything. We are looking for the natural history of the disease. In quotes, natural history of the disease. Not, these participants means they are lab rats. The meaning of lab rats. The person, rats in the lab, whom you can, do whatever you feel like. That was the unfortunate, and that's what woke up the world. So it is not only here, it's all places. Many participants died of syphilis during the study, and then the case came up, and the US Supreme Court then gave the context, and a lot of people. The study was stopped in 1973 by US Department of Health and Education and Welfare only after its existence was publicized and became a complete political embarrassment. So it had to go up to that level. So just remember, research and things have been done in a most uncanny manner, most unmoral manner, most unethical manner in the past. Another one we know is thalidomide. Thalidomide one, I'm sure you know about phocomelia. When thalidomide was used in 1950s to combat unpleasant symptoms associated with pregnancy, was done. At the time it was being used, it was not usually disclosed to the patient that the drug was investigational and could cause teratogenic effect. The word teratogenic means anyone who has conceived or a pregnant mother, the fetus, could get, certain deformities, any kind of deformities which could take place. That's called teratogenicity. This was known to the individuals. It was not that, investigators, but they never disclosed it. After women in Europe, Canada, and US were treated with the drug, it was discovered the drug had harmful effects, causing severe deformities in the fetus. Thalidomide was soon banned worldwide, but unfortunately, approximately 12,000 babies were born due to severe deformities thanks to thalidomide. Ethically completely wrong. So these are certain examples we speak about. There is a radiation experiment, the radiation was. So whatever we have today as a principle, there is a historical perspective to it, which was ethically wrong, and then we were able to somehow manage and bring it down to that extent. So radiation experiments in 40s and 60s, US officials studied the effect of radiation through experiments in hospital patients, pregnant women, mentally disturbed children, enlisted military personnel, etc. Few of the participants of the experiments gave informed consent. Most had no knowledge of what they were being subjected to radiation material. Nobody knew. They just given radiation, and they said, "Oh, we'll see. What it does. It might cause you of becoming a superhuman. Those Superman kind of phenomena was there. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Please understand, it works only in the way of doing business. Business as usual cannot be done. Business has to be with ethics. It has to be with principles, with morality. That's most important in this. The Manhattan Project officials authorized the wartime experiments to establish health and safety standards for thousands of workers in the atomic bomb plants. If I make atomic bomb, so many people you don't have to throw a bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki to prove that we had atomic bomb and destroy Japan. But also the people who manufactured it in US in certain places, specifically in the Walter Reed areas in US, also have the same problems. So it is ethically and difficult aspect. So historical perspective has shown us so many things. So responses to the research abuses led us to draw the codes, which is called the Nuremberg Code. Then after the thalidomide disaster, we talk about the Kefauver Amendment of 1962. So these are certain, landmarks in the world's ethical places where we have started using the landmark principle. So finally, we come to the Helsinki Principle, which was by the World Medical Association in 1964, most recently updated in 2000, and also being updated in 2021 as we speak, thanks to the COVID pandemic issues. And this is the Declaration of Helsinki, which is builds on the Nuremberg Code and is the basis of good clinical practices. It's called GCP. Many of you can take GCP training. It's available on the net. You will find it with an agency called PPT, People's Partnership Development. So though they use this kind of thing, you can always, there are certain free ones you can always get and know that the good clinical practices. It will help you to get an ethical certificate also for it. The National Research Act of 1974, which was passed in US, and that is also one of the first ones which we takes up at certain places in US and codified the requirement process and set the stages of a very important report called the Belmont Report. That is the basis of what we take up today. So let's look at what is the basic National Commission's context, and we'll go to the Belmont Report after this. Carrying out its charge, the Commission prepared the Belmont Report in 1979. This is what the National Commission on Protection of Human Subjects in Biomedical and Behavioral Research. That's what was done. The Belmont Report is a statement of basic ethical principles and guidelines that provide an analytical framework to guide the resolution of the ethical problems arising from research with the human subjects. Okay. The framework of Belmont Report is presented in 3 discussion topics: boundaries between practice and research, basic ethical principles, and its applications. And the way I have devolved my, presented my presentation is also based on the similar ethical principles of Belmont Report, as you would see. This is how the Belmont Report looks like, summarizes the ethical principles and guidelines for research involving the human subjects. The 3 core principles identified are, there are 3 core principles. Okay. As you will see there, the three core principles we've already mentioned in this: the boundaries between practice and research, basic ethical principles, and the application process, which is where we will see more details of how it is. Now, I just want to speak a couple of lines on the bioethics versus public health ethics. As you have seen bioethics, what we have seen, and what we have seen public health ethics. But just the summary, what we are just drawing up. Medical ethics, focused on doctor-patient relationship, is widely discussed and taught to medical students. It's taught to all kinds of medical students, what we know, keep confidentiality, etc. But a comparable field of public health ethics is not well developed to guide public health practitioners. Many of us who are there in the field of public health, as well as people who would really do the research, the researchers you will see are coming from public health backgrounds or pure medical backgrounds. But core medical researchers are less, but public health researchers are much more, because it's more of an operational research which we plan all the times. So given that context, this is area which we need to have a distinction. So public health ethics, just to give you a clear context, I think raises a number of moral problems that extend beyond the earlier boundaries of bioethics and require their own form of ethical analysis. Okay, this is Callahan and Jennings in 2002. I am sure in 2021 we'll come up with the new ones which WHO is planning to come up in public health ethics. All this I'm giving you because with the COVID-19, with the backdrop of COVID-19 pandemic, we do have many things coming out in ethical principles. There's lots of revision which is being planned out. So public health is what society collectively to assure the conditions for healthy people, and then what are public health ethics, right? So that's what we speak about. Public health ethics may be defined as principles and values that help guide actions designed to promote health and prevent injury and disease to the population. Larger quote. In thinking about the problem, it would be helpful to distinguish public health ethics from biomedical ethics. This is what NIH, National Institutes of Health, which is one of the principal agencies of US, we follow most of the NIH guidelines for any research ethics, as well as any kind of public health interventions or a medical intervention. Any of the research you are going to do in health field has to follow the NIH principles. So that's the most exhaustive principles which is currently available. So let's understand some of the issues. So let's put you through with some questions. Should scientists consider the possibility that their research might encourage bioterrorism? What's your answer? If I do some research, maybe I'm doing, let me give you a simple example. I am trying to build up a vaccine for COVID-19 pandemic, which is going to be 100% successful. Now you have Pfizer, you have got Moderna, you have got Sputnik, you have got AstraZeneca. There's so many vaccines available, the Sinovac, etc. These are so many vaccines are available across the globe. They all have a 95%. Please note, all these COVID-19 vaccination, they really do not prevent the infection. What they prevent 100% and other things is they prevent the mortality. They try to bring down the mortality rate of the COVID. So I am going to try out a new vaccine which is going to prevent the infection person, which is going to be the best vaccine. Obviously, when you are able to prevent the infection, you're breaking the chain of transmission and able to take care of it. But while doing so, I developed another type of COVID-19, which was a mutation. All the Delta, Zulu, Lambda strains all out. I have made a new Zoo Epsilon strain, which is going to be far more infective because I did not understand the nuances of doing that. So this is where it comes, the basic research. I'm doing it in a lab. I've still not tried it on the individuals. And unfortunately, a lab accident took place. I got infected. As soon as I do that, infected. Since I'm infected, I go home, pass it to my family, and they pass it to the neighbors. They pass it to everywhere. Thanks to me, we have a pandemic. You can always take my name tomorrow. At least in the bad sense, it's okay. But doesn't matter. I still become famous, right? So should the scientists consider a possibility? The answer somebody has given very rightly. Definitely not. Definitely not. Let's look at the other one. Should regulations underpinning good research be the same everywhere? Now, many of all of you, many of the students who are in this course are from Africa. Okay, and I'm sure all of you have seen the brunt of HIV/AIDS epidemic. I myself worked in many countries in Africa personally with HIV. That's my primary area of expertise, which I have. It's more than 25 odd years, and out of which about 15, 20 years has been in African settings. So I'm sure you've seen the AIDS research which has taken place. With all due regards, we haven't been able to find a vaccine till yet. We've done so much of HVTN, the HIV Prevention Trials Network, HPTN, plus HIV Vaccine Trials Network. We did so many ASATG, Adult AIDS Control Trials Group. I've myself done so much of trials in South Africa, Hlth province with this university there, or in the Kenya, we have done it specifically in in certain places, as well as in Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam. This is the major areas which we have done research. At least I was involved into it. So research on HIV/AIDS, so regulation underpinning good should be same everywhere. Answer is definitely yes. I must have the same ethical principles of the research which I'm doing it in US. Must be applied if I'm doing it in Nairobi in Kenya, okay, or in Dar es Salaam, or in South Africa, Pretoria, or in Addis Ababa. Doesn't matter at all. Principle, the people are the same. I must use the highest principles, plus follow the local customs and traditions of Amhara people in maybe in Ethiopia, or we can follow the Swahili, even the tribes which we are going. I'm not going into the details of the tribes. It's not pertinent one, but I'm just giving that even the tribal principles must be followed. That is very important. And that's the same thing which we do for all places. Why are health resources scarce in some countries? How should be resource allocated? Definitely, there are developing countries, underdeveloped countries, developing countries, and developed countries. Whoever has money or more stronger is able to do all the research and do this. But does it mean that only the things should be kept there? Definitely not. That's ethically wrong. See, look at the ethics principles. Ethics principle not only looks at it, ethics principle also looks at the resource and everything. So these are the issues. Fortunately, thanks to WHO, UN systems and all that, we are able to get through all those and share with others. Some places we are successful, some places we are not. For example, malaria tablets, HIV/AIDS drugs. The generic drugs which are being produced made it possible for everybody across the globe. Each and every person living with HIV is able to get access to them thanks to the generic drugs being. If we did not have that principle of letting the people produce it, only the companies which manufactured them would be having it. The prices would be here. Only a few people could afford it. That's very important. When is withdrawing treatment appropriate? That's a very important question which we need to answer. Should I withhold the treatment or should I withdraw the treatment when I see? And in certain cases, we haven't still understood the basic things. A person has no way to survive and is in terrible pain. Should I legalize euthanasia? So look at it. The questions are plenty. Maybe we do not have all the answers today, but it is worth a debate and to understand this. That's all about. Once you start debating, questioning things, it's all about ethical principles. So situations that might target ethical complications, or you can say certain things or ethical concerns which is there. And nothing is better than what I can suggest right now. But this is, I have used the example of a published literature of pandemic preparedness. But you can always use the current ones which are available with this COVID-19 pandemic. But let's look at it. Implementation of social distancing. Here is the word social distancing which was used. So we just borrowed it from the influenza ones and used it in the COVID ones. You heard, all of you must have heard about the word social distancing. Okay. In fact, we could have used a better word called physical distancing rather than social distancing. Social distancing means I don't even talk to you on phone, right? I'm sure the COVID-19 pandemic has not mutated enough to go through the electronic media to get infected and infect others. The day we have such a virus which can infect one, I call you, hello, how are you? And you get infected. Wonderful. I think we are in for a big problem. But I think those days are still far and few. And let's keep to, only face-to-face ones and with all the kinds of this. So a very important aspect is to wear, as they say, as we always keep using a mask. COVID appropriate behavior. So social distancing with potential closure of business, school, churches, recreational and social events and mass gatherings, all were cancelled, right? So that's quarantine contagious. This is the old one, which we have taken out from Director of Health way back. This is that old quarantine contagious disease, which was found in wax. This is 1914. So those days, how it was pasted, I was able to get a photo of this. So I thought it's good to see the 1914 pandemic, how it was put up as a quarantine, contagious disease. That time they didn't know it was pandemic influenza, by the way. Now we are very confidently we speak about, when the things are done, it is always good to be contained in that context. So cases in control of infectious disease, screening of HIV and latent TB infection, these are also highly ethical, highlighting the tension between the integrity of bodies so that we can take a proactive action to make sure the larger community doesn't get infected. Disease surveillance is another big one, and reporting to the disease in public health registries. It highlights the tension between confidentiality, doctor-patient relationship. But I'm sorry, for a larger good, for the larger things, we need to have that kind of a repository as well as a repertoire of these things. So the necessity to obtain accurate information about the incidence and prevalence of the disease so that the country can, allocate appropriate resources to control that. So that's a larger good. So contact investigations are important in certain cases, like specifically in some countries, we had this during the COVID-19 pandemic. We had, if you get COVID-19, immediate your family people will also be screened, just to be sure that, we can take care of the whole cohort and then put you all into a quarantine in this so that you don't spread it to the others. Or if you have it, you are quarantined within your home with a kind of social distancing and some kind of measures such as there. So contact investigations are important, but again, that means that I'm supposed to, supposing I do it for syphilis or for HIV/AIDS, then your sexual partners come into being, and you can have more than 1 or 5 or 7 or 10, then you start having a problem. Then my private liberties and my personal things are being exposed at certain time in the name of ethical principles. But those are certain balancing act which we have to do at various times. And directly observe treatment for TB patients. The highlighting the right to refuse the treatment. Okay, that is important. Highlighting the right to refuse the treatment and the risk posed by the individuals whose untreated disease poses a risk to others. Yes, I can always refuse to take a TB medication. My religion, my ethnicity, and my culture does not allow any medicines to be taken. But then the principle of the law of the land says that if I don't get treated for TB, I will pass it on to other people. So the TB can never be eliminated. That's wrong. You can enforce that you have to take it even when it is supposed to be a more of a policing act. You're using the police to give certain medications and others. Classically, this was practiced in the elimination of polio. Polio was the first disease where we saw where we unfortunately had to resort to a forcible, because some rumors were spread that the polio vaccination causes impotency. And moment people said, oh, my male child getting important means, oh God, everything has gone down the drain. But fortunately, things took place. We had to do some places, we had to use force. Some places we had to use a better way of treating business and so on and so forth, but all in good faith. And that's ethically what is called the public health ethics part. So, and again, the quarantine of individuals who would not be would not complete their TB treatment, highlighting the tension between personal liberty and potential of risk. Mandatory childhood vaccination is another big problem. There are lots of big groups in the world who are anti-vaccine lobby. They don't want to use my vaccine. If I have heard this from various times and the initially parts of the COVID-19 vaccination was being given, that if I take a COVID-19, some mRNA, and people came up the mRNA vaccine, I may become a sheep. So today I am a human being, tomorrow you'll see me as a sheep. Well, unfortunately, after taking the vaccines, we never turned into a sheep, or we could have turned into a superhuman. So somehow that got alleviated, when the doctors and the others, and especially the volunteers took it first, they never turned into toad or sheep or, cows or buffaloes. So it's okay. Then people started. But this was a major problem with even from the literate class and various countries. So that's about the field of ethics. So you've now understood basic aspects. Now let's look at some of the branches of ethics, just the same continuation part of it. And I'll now take up more details of business methodology ethics, and then we can shift over to the informed consent, and then we will go for the application process. So it's been a good time. So moderator, can I continue or should we have a 5 minutes break? How is it?
Yes, sir, please. We have a time.
No, I said, should I? Okay, we can give 5 minutes or we should continue as it is. Whatever is
Please
the
continue, sir.
policy of, we'll continue. Okay, thank you. Then I think we can, take up a little more time for questions and answers. So ethics or moral philosophy is a branch of philosophy which takes a systematic approach to define the social as well as individual morality. So this is again, we are coming to now from social areas, we are coming into more of philosophy. So philosophy is one of the important ones, which is again moral philosophy. This is ethics. It sets norms and standards to be then applied to the judgment of behavior and practice. Again, the definition. The school of ethics, we have these schools. I say that this is the branches of ethics. We have something called meta-ethics, okay, the study of meanings of ethics, what we have already seen. There's something called normative ethics, the study of moral duties, rules within the social context. Applied ethics, which is what we are going to do, application of ethical principles, and professional ethics. Any professional, any profession which is there are certain ethical principles associated. It's not only medical ones. Even a person who is a lawyer has certain professional ethics. A person who's a chartered accountant is a professional ethics. Anyone who deals with certain contracts or certain things, ethics comes into it. So applied ethics as it relates to criminal justice professionals. So this is also, I've just taken the example of criminal justice, but it could be taken for any of the contract that's between two individuals. So meta ethics investigates. I will not go to the details of more of meta-ethics part of it because we have seen more of these. But just giving you a brief context, it defined as the study of origin and meaning of ethical concept we have already seen, and it is concerned with the underlying reasons of making a judgment. Once you know the history, then you know why you are taking a certain judgment or why you are taking a certain call. Normative ethics, again, this comes from more of a normative guidance. As you see, the normative guidance commonly comes in the medical fraternity, comes from WHO, the World Health Organization. Any of the guidance, you see how to treat tuberculosis, what are the newer drugs, etc., so on and so forth, HIV/AIDS, MNCH, which is maternal and child health. You look at non-communicable disease, everything understand. Whatever health has got, it's given a normative guidance. The countries are then expected to use those updated normative guidance to use for their own countries. That has becomes an ethical point in this. So branch of philosophical ethics which classifies actions as right. And how do you know it is right? It is not right only for the country or right or wrong. It is right from all angles, right from international angles, right from the national angles, right from the subnational angles, and right from the community or the tribe angle. Do not forget, ethics deals with whatever is the most important one. That means we talk about where we are looking at and how it is going to be done. So that is very, very important as far as things are concerned. So that's about it. Attempts to develop a set of rules governing the human conduct, what is right and wrong thing to do, what is an acceptable behavior given any social context. That's about it. Applied ethics involves examining specific controversial issues such as gun control, animal rights, environmental concerns, homosexuality, capital punishment or nuclear war. Big things in life. So all the big things we use ethical principles as well. Practical applications of normative rules are morality applied to behavior and social interactions, enforcement of rules, regulations, or laws on behavior, and review of ethical dilemmas as it relates to behavior. Professional ethics are very important, and you can see there are businesses, criminal justice, education, not-profits, etc. I would limit myself and my discussions to medical professional ethics and contextual framing of set of standards regulating behaviors of specific professions, group or associations. Let's speak about the medical ones, which we will see. So, ethics and research. Research is a disciplined inquiry that aims to contribute to the body of knowledge and theory. So this is what, so after all the history and all the context. Now we are coming to the core principles of what we had to teach today. I just set the scene so that you are aware of what research and ethics means. So now we are coming in how we are going to apply whatever we have learned, the large body, in context of research. Research ethics refers to moral principles guiding research from its inception through its completion and publications of result and beyond. Doesn't stop at start. There's a protocol. We develop a protocol. This protocol is then taken with all the committees and passed, and we find it fine. Then we start the study. We document each process of the study and then go ahead and cause and publish it. Why? We want other people to benefit from our research. The whole scientific community, the whole world community to benefit from the research that we have done. Its ultimate aim is to contribute to the body of knowledge. So it's very important. So publication of results are important. Why publication? Because that will help us to have a peer review. That means my counterparts who are equally competent to understand what I'm doing will question my results and say, sorry, boss, this is not correct. This is wrong. If that's the way we are looking at it, that's what makes a difference. This is where research and publications are important. And beyond means dissemination. So research committee or research ethics committee is defined as, now when you have a research ethical committee, it's usually a multidisciplinary independent body charged with reviewing research involving human subjects to ensure their dignity. Each human subject must have their dignity, the rights and welfare, and with the principle of no harm. So I'm using a single word again and again throughout my lecture. You will find it is the single overriding communication objective, or SOCO, which is a principle of no harm. So in ethics, even if you haven't understood anything, I'll be fine. Just understand one simple word and use your own scientific knowledge to present what you want is in quotes, principle of no harm. So that's about the terminology part. Let's understand what are the key principles to address here. The research should be designed, reviewed, and undertaken to ensure integrity and quality. Research staff and subjects must be informed fully about the purpose, methods, and intended possible use of the research and what their participation in research entail. What are their risks, if any, are involved. Risk is often defined as reference to the potential. We do not know the real. So it's potential physical or psychological harm, discomfort or stress to human participants that a research project might generate. It's a complete repertoire or a full circle body which we need to present. The confidentiality of information supplied by research subjects and the anonymity of respondents must be respected. We have no choice but to respect the anonymity of responses and etc. The key participants must participate in a voluntary way, free from any coercion. That's important. And I give you, come to my research. People are not coming. Okay, I'll pay you $100 per day. Do join my research. Everybody comes. Poor people, poor things, and I make them do anything I feel like. It's not correct. So coercion, you may pay honorariums. Yes, it is allowed. But that is only because a person is probably losing wages when they're joining your program, or is in some way may be subjected to a harm which is not intended. I don't intend to cause any harm because that's the principle of no harm. But even in my best safeguards, I may land up actually doing some bit of harm because I do not know. If I knew everything, I won't be doing research. So that's important. Harm to research participants must be avoided. The independence of research must be clear, and any conflict of interest or partiality must be explicit. For example, a new drug on COVID-19 is to be done. Now, I, as a good researcher, one of the companies, a big pharmaceutical company, catches me and says, you know what, Dr. Roy, I'm going to give you millions of dollars. Just do the research and show that it works. So you've already given the output to me. Right? Output is there that the drug must work. Second principle, you're asking me, do it anywhere you feel like, kill anybody you like, but give me the result, and here is $1 million for you. I have to. So when it goes for publication, those are where you get caught. I have to declare the conflict of interest because somebody has paid me money. I just can't become from a overnight, pauper to a super rich man by just sitting on the chair and doing some nothing, right? So those are the principles of research which must be taken into account. Now let's look at who are research participants and what is the principles of selecting research participants ethical. Well, I'm looking purely from ethical. You have learned the other ones which is there. So research participants will be living individuals who provide data in a study, and that must be same places over there. Private information should be kept completely confidential under lock and key or with a password protected computers, etc. Participant is preferred over a subject. Subject is like, kingdom and subjects. Sorry, we are no longer kings when you are, putting at things. Let's, participants. People who are voluntary come and helping us to enhance our scientific knowledge to contribute to the whole of college levels. The knowledge base and theory, that's what they're doing. So people have that liberty to do that. So participants better implies choice and equality. Participants should not be subject to the research, but rather participate voluntarily. It's not that you're forced to participate at the gunpoint. If you don't participate, I kill you. I don't kill you because if I kill you, I lose my participant, I kill your family. Okay. So that's more important. So that's about how we look at the research and the branches of ethics. Now let's quickly delve into the informed consent. I will first give you a whole idea because informed consent is very important. Any of you who are planning to do studies, please note you must make the informed consent as explicit as possible. So I have also taken all the examples from various studies which we have been doing at various times, and to just make sure that you understand it, and then you can use it. And I have also developed a checklist, which is a very simple one. You can take this once we circulate the slides with you. You can always take it up for any of the studies which you want to do, and then we'll say. So let's talk about the informed consent. So what is the definition of it? Informed consent, as the name suggests, is a voluntary agreement. It's a voluntary, not a coaxed agreement with a gunpoint or something, to participate in research. It is not merely a form that is signed, but it is a process in which the subject has an understanding of the research and the risks involved in it. More importantly, the risks involved in it. Informed consent is essential before enrolling a participant and ongoing once enrolled. So it is an important before the start of the study, as well as you have to, as the study progresses, you have to also update the same ones as we have done. Okay. Informed consent must be obtained for all types of human subjects, including diagnostic, therapeutic, interventional, social, behavioral studies, and research conducted domestically or abroad. Please note, as far as we are concerned, how do you take an informed consent is when I ask you what is your name, I must take an informed consent. Please understand the way we understand ethics or any study is if I even ask you your name, I should have an informed consent signed before that. So forget about all these long words. Remember this key word, even a name, when you're asking for a research participant, must have an informed consent, written informed consent form, or an implied. In certain cases, you can have an implied consent. We'll talk about those when we talk about the certain already ongoing, like you are already giving a national tuberculosis program is doing the dots. You can always take up certain data from there, but that is an implied research because it's just looking at a data collection where things are going in. You are not doing any intervention. If you do an intervention, then definitely you need to have a explicit so-called ethical, or sorry, I beg your pardon, informed consent. So obtaining consent involves informing the subject about his or her rights, the purpose of the study, the procedures to be undergone, and the potential risks and benefits of participation. Subjects in the study must participate willingly, not being coaxed into participation, either by using money, force, or some other social, social, uh, what should I say, push or something of that nature. So informed consent, if I have to put in a single slide, what does it actually? It provides a information about the study. Whatever study you are doing, it provides a full array of information. It talks about the purpose of the study. It talks about how the respondents was selected. Please note, even that you are selected out of the people who are there. So that also has to be. When you are participating in the study, these are the known risks which could be expected in the study, and these are the known benefits which we know. And you must also add the line that yes, there are certain unknown benefits and unknown risks which are also there. Score. Subjects must be free from reasonably anticipated physical or emotional harm. Definitely. You're taking somebody who's already in a harmed condition, that is a very big difficult thing. You should not be taking them into part of it. And like somebody who cannot give an informed consent. For example, a mentally disabled person is not able to give you any consent because the person doesn't understand. So, but unfortunately, my drug, which I'm trying out, is going to be tried out only on the mentally ill people. Now, here's a big dilemma. How do I get an informed consent? The answer is taking consent of the guardian. Okay, you take the guardian or the parents, whatever it could be. Usually, if it's an adult, then we talk about a guardian for this for people. So that is also important. Subjects need to be informed of what they will be asked to reveal about themselves. Now, I ask in a HIV/AIDS, how many sexual partners did you have yesterday? Now, the person is actually counting and telling 7. And I say, oh my God, this person has 7 sexual partners, dangerous. And in the consent or informed consent, I started forming my own judgmentality. Very difficult. So they need to be informed that you would be asked certain personal questions. Are you okay with it? Are you, fine with it? Or if not, please feel free to refuse. That's very important. That must be explicit in the informed consent. And other thing is very, very important is results will be used only for research and not for publishing in the newspaper, telling that, these people were found to be having HIV/AIDS and most immoral people available in the whole of this world and this and that, so that the person is crucified the next day. Very unfortunate. That's never the case. This informed consent must say, because that way we are held legally. This consent form was signed and we put them, they signed there, and then if something we do, we are also held equally liable for that. Voluntary participation is very important. Respondents can keep any incentives if they withdraw from the study. So incentives are being given if they lose certain wages or their loss of any kind of salaries or other things, or if there is some level of anticipated harm which may come in. And these participants have come voluntarily. For example, in anti-cancer drug, we know that they will be harmed. So we will definitely compensate them. But somebody said, my mother, had this cancer. I am ready to sacrifice my little bit of, whatever the adverse effect would be, I am ready. But if it can help my mother survive tomorrow, it will be a great deal. Fantastic. Please come. We respect people like you. But then because you're coming, we need to also compensate you for certain things, which after you go back from the study, you might not be able to join back your services for some time, or maybe having no wages. So that has to be put up. So those are acceptable. Confidentiality of data has to be maintained, and contact information of the researcher must be there so that the person can always contact. One of the informed consent must be kept with you and the other must be with the participant. Voluntariness is a must. Subjects must agree to reveal information about themselves, be able to provide informed consent. Who might not be able to provide informed consent would be always asked and requested by the guardian. So who are not able to provide informed consent because of their physical inability or physical inability or mental inability must be able to give. There should be a guardian along with the participant who would understand everything if the person is participating. And please do not forget, how can we guarantee that participant is truly voluntary? It is very difficult because most of the time people in developing countries come for a little bit of money. Whatever we are doing, sometimes we do not have that amount of money available. So and we are totally loss of wages. So it is important. This is a very tricky question. We have to keep it in some way. But overall, if it satisfies that you are not really coaxing somebody to join, coaxing or forcing somebody to join the study, it's okay. And the informed consent is fully valid. Respect for the integrity and autonomicity, which is very important, has to be there of the individual. Informed consent. The standard procedure for obtaining informed consent involves a statement describing all reasonable and foreseeable risk or discomfort to the participants. That's it. It's a complete package which needs to be put in. Elements of the informed consent. Let's look at it. What are there? We have already seen it. The individual must be competent. So in sane mind and sane health. That is the one thing which we always use in this. That the individual, I, in sane mind and sane health. As you make a will, simple. Informed consent is just a replica of the will. I am fully competent to make the will and somebody is not forcing me. The same thing which is being mentioned here. The individual must be a competent individual who has the capacity to make decisions. She or he must have received all necessary information and arrived at a decision without coercion, inducement, or intimidation. Very important. And he or she does not have the, if he or she does not have the capacity to give free consent, must be protected by supplementary measures. Okay, supplementary measures, in other words, guardian or authorized witness. Very important. So this is just repeated again. Information concerning procedures, testing, everything which needs to be explained. All benefits, risks, problems, alternatives should be fully explained. The degree to which a confidentiality, I wanted to highlight this part, which is important, the last one. The degree to which confidentiality can be maintained should also be explained to the person. Sometimes we have to use, and why I'm using this term is, confidentiality can be absolute or confidentiality can be shared. How shared? Say, for example, let me tell you, in this study, whom I am putting into some places, this person is getting a particular drug A. Unfortunately, the person had to go to a place B where also the trial is going on. Now, those people have no idea that this person who's in my city here in X city is now being transferred to city B there and will be getting the same one. So I have to share some of the records of this individual. So this is called as shared confidentiality. In research ethics, it is sometimes done, but in public health ethics, a person getting HIV/AIDS medication. See, let me take the example of Kenya. The person is getting from a ART center at the Central Hospital in Nairobi, is suddenly transferred to, or has to go to Kisumu, and will be taking up another particular ART center. Then what we can do is what is allowed in the Kenyan system is very simple. The NSSCP will use the transfer out facility. Same is the concept with National Tuberculosis and Leprosy Program, NLTP, which is there. The same thing is for the program. You can be transferred out. So this is the kind of thing which is shared confidentiality. So there's something absolute confidentiality where you only have the data and everything, nobody else knows. Shared is you are liable to share the data because the person will be getting the medication or the treatment from a different point. So informed consent checklists, basic and additional statement of what the project is about, and explanation of the purposes of the project, the expected duration of client's participation, a description of the procedures to be followed, identification of any procedures which are experimental, a description of any reasonably foreseeable risk or discomfort to the clients which may be there. A description of any benefits to the client or to others which may be reasonably to be expected from the project. So these are a basic checklist when you create an informed consent. Same checklist again, we are going with more things. A disclosure of appropriate alternate procedures, course of treatment that might be advantageous to the client. Many times now, today, we do not do something new. We try out a new drug or a new procedure or a new method against a known method. So we might have to give, that old, the standard method has all these ones. So please note, this is not that we are doing something new. Something may be good, something may be bad. We're just trying to find out these things. Next is a statement containing the extent, if any, to which a confidentiality of records identifying the subject will be made. Definitely. And where further information may be obtained, that informed consent in a good ones, also tell you, please visit these websites to get more information about these kind of studies which we have done, or please visit the national repository of knowledge or national program for more details. An explanation of whom to contact for answers to pertinent questions. If all those things are true, but also I have some questions. Suddenly I found that, I will be participating, but when I take this, I just had a lot of headache. Now what to do? At middle of night, I cannot get, but there is a line in this informed consent that you can contact this investigator even at the middle of night. Please do. That's important. Please keep that way. So that's about the checklist. A statement of participation is voluntary. This must be written there that I am participating in a voluntary method, a voluntary way, without any coercion or certain things. And I can see some forms and others. So this is, you can probably also click those links to see more. A statement that the particular treatment or procedure may be involving this and others, like the embryo or the fetus, especially the pregnant woman. The subject is or may become pregnant. It is currently unforeseen. It has happened with many of us when we started the program with the ladies who got pregnant and we had to look at and explain a new consent form, etc. So keep that option open. Anticipated circumstances. Again, anticipate what might happen. So that's why you may require a little bit more of an experienced researcher to do all those things. Then the consequences of our client's decision to withdraw from the project and the procedures for orderly termination of participation by the client. This is obviously a most important thing that the person can do. So informed consent, you have information, the comprehension, which is the language, and the voluntariness. Please note, this is the three most important thing in a nutshell for an informed consent. So that's about the information, comprehension, and voluntariness. There's something else you must do, which is called ongoing consent. Yes, in many studies, we have had to do this. It is after every particular phase ends, we have to take another consent. So every time you have an encounter with the subject, if the researcher to continue the informed consent process, discuss new information that may impact the subject's willingness. When I started the project 6 months back, I did not have this information. 6 months down the line, I am much more educated and much more advanced as far as the scientific knowledge is concerned. I must share that knowledge with my participants. That's an ethical principle and a first principle of accord. So that needs to be done, and this is discussing new information. Remind the subject of study goals and objectives that will improve the subject compliance with protocols and improve retention of subjects. So as we know, thanks to everything, the ethical principles always try to make any study or anything better for the humankind. But there is always risks and benefits in any public health intervention, as we know, and that follows the ethics part of it. The nature of risk and benefit of the public health interventions may vary. Many forms of risk need to be taken into consideration. A detailed description of risk and benefits of the study is the key in taking an informed decision as whether to participate or not to participate in a research study. Let us leave it to the individuals, and people who feel they would like to participate are most welcome, but give them the information and the tool to do so. So a few questions to ask in relation to pursuing the research project. What is the aim of my research? When this is primarily for how you write protocols. This is for students who would be writing their protocols for any of the studies in this. Please note this from the ethical principle. These need to be followed and adjusted. What is the aim of my research? Very clear. Don't make it all kinds of verbiage and lots of words and with no outcome. It has to be very clear. Whose interest would be served by my research? Obviously the scientific interest, but that has to be made very explicit when you put it. What are the risks? What are the opportunity costs? So that gives us a complete repertoire of informed consent. So that in a nutshell is your informed consent, which is one of the major principles which we follow. Now I'll go to the practical application of informed consent. And so once we have done all those, and how do we put it? So here is what is the informed consent based on any study or research protocol. Consent given by a competent individual. All those things were all the background you noted. Now you look at how succinct we have started making it. Has received the necessary information, has adequately understood the information, etc., etc. and without any inductment. You can take this and put it in your informed consent form in that manner. Before the study is initiated, there is a 4-step process that needs to be done. Information is provided, information is understood, not only provided by like I'm speaking right. None of you are speaking back because obviously we don't have the time, shortage of time and etc. But idea in the informed consent, it should be a dialogue, not a monologue. Now it's more of a monologue with all caricatures. A decision is made and comprehension is monitored and maintained. Who is competent? You all know it, that mentally competent and legally competent. Please note, informed consent as a process embodies respect for persons, autonomy, rights, and capacities. Communication process starts before the research is initiated. Please maintain those things out there, otherwise it does not work and requires the review and approval of the ethics committee. So, essential elements of informed consent, specifically description. These parts I can go quickly over these to give you same thing. All need to be ticked. We have already seen this. I don't want to elaborate more, but this is more for writing purposes. When you're writing an ethical principles and writing to a institutional review board, etc., this must be done. So that applied principles. Description of the research. As you can see, this is what we did in FHI in Cambodia in the initial research studies. This is taken from one of the researches I was involved in. So research study, safety, efficacy not known, purpose and objective was known, blood samples, we had, this is the initial zidovudine trials, AZT, azothiometin or zidovudine trials we had no idea. 476 trials we had done in, precisely we did this in 2002 onwards. That's where we got the antiretrovirals to that extent. And description of reasonable context, which is there. We can look at all these physical anticipated ones. It's easy. Expected benefits, as you can see, this is again, we have seen from part of the benefits of a small child. As you can see, this is a child who had some deformities. So we requested the lactating mothers to participate. So expected results, we did mention it in that manner. Potentially, okay. So potentially advantages, participation which are there, regular health funds. I'll just go over it to just make you explanation of confidentiality. We have mentioned yes, but I just wanted to highlight when you're writing it, make it more explicit. Do not shorten it. The confidentiality is taken as a very serious measure by all the institutional review boards. They don't want to. So degree of confidentiality, who may review and access the records, disclosure of limited ability to protect the confidence. You must also say that I can protect this information, I cannot protect this. Otherwise, it's gone. Like the study doesn't go through. It's very important explanation. And compensation, obviously, that is okay, no problem. To whom to contact about research participants, exactly the same thing which I've said. I've only made it more explicit so that when you do a good study, this is all comes into being. Explanation that the participation is voluntary, and do not forget, complete your study. Do not leave it half. And do document the informed consent to the best possible things. So we'll look at informed consent and IC and the ethical committee approves this. So this is a complete consent form as well as the protocol, title of the study, forms what's in the form, stamp of the institution. That's all what I had to take up today. So thank you very much. I would welcome any questions that you'd like to ask.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Dipanjan Roy. Thank you for your nice presentation and very brief presentation. We have we have got a lot of information, and which is basic informations you have given us. Huge amount of data were found here, and I thank you again. Saying this, I give chance to participants to question, if any participant wants to ask regarding research ethics. I give chance. Okay. Okay. You can raise your hand and I'll give you.
Can I make a comment, sir?
Yeah, yes.
I just wanted to congratulate the speaker, Dr. Roy. It was an excellent presentation, and I, who am not from public health, also can use this research ethics for my own work. And you know, and I think it was a brilliant presentation. My congratulations to Dr. Roy.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, doctor. Okay, Mr. Sammai. Mr. Sammai. Okay. Dr. Mahar, please let Mr. Sammai unmute his microphone and
Okay.
Yes,
No.
he can unmute himself and put the question.
Am I audible?
yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. It was a nice presentation, and I have taken so many information regarding the ethical issues, and hopefully I have added and the rest participants have taken so many information in the similar way. I hope that. Saying this, I do have some questions, and what will be the ethical principle looks like regarding the terminally ill and those unable to take an informed consent, and some trials like drug trials. What should be our approach? Any special thing regarding this? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sammai. Doctor, there are questions on the chat box. The first one says that I have 3 questions, and the first one is when you waive informed consent. The second one is what is for non-competent? What do you do for non-competent individuals? And the other is what is assent? Dr. Dipanjan, is that clear?
Thank you, thank you very much, and thank you for the questions. Let me start answer. I can see, but I can take up a few questions more than I can, look at. I was going through the chat when you were speaking. And the questions which is there, right? 3 questions. That is, first is when you, one question you've already mentioned, terminally ill patients, which definitely I'll say, what is assent, right?
Yeah.
What you do. And third is, non-competent individual, and what is assent. Okay. Any other questions? Anyone else?
Okay, doctor, is there any questions?
Then I can take all of them together.
Please react on this and we'll continue. Thank you.
Okay. So let me answer the first question for the terminally ill patients. A very good question for terminally ill patients and patients who are almost at the last stages, and we are trying to do some kind of a intervention on them. What kind of a informed consent we should be taking? The answer to the question, the informed consent remains the same. It does not change at all. Please note, the informed consent, all the elements of the informed consent remains the same. So just show you, when I go to the practical elements of any informed consent, just to take you back, element is in this. So these are when you are writing for any. So it means now the issue is a terminally ill patient may not be mentally and physically competent to give you a consent, right? That's important. So it is not only terminally ill patients, but any patient who's not a competent person to give informed consent must have a guardian or an authorized representative along with the participant. So that means we are primarily taking an informed consent from 2 individuals. one person may not be fully physically or mentally competent, and the other person is a near relative, whoever the person, the guardian or the relative or whatever it would be, the authorized representative. We like to use the word authorized representative who would give the informed consent. Right. So that is one of the things. The next question is, where do you waive informed consent? Yes, very good question. During my presentation, I did, touch upon this briefly. You waive the informed consent when data which is being collected is already undergoing. Say, for example, in a tuberculosis control program, you're already giving diagnosis is happening. You're doing this thing. Now, I wanted to see what is the level of this particular, our program, National Tuberculosis Program. How good is the program? So I am doing a more of an operational research in a program which is already running, where I'm not really taking any kind of patient or any interviews from the patients. I'm just collecting data which is being collected through the national program. In that, I am excused to have an informed consent. In other words, what I'm collecting is a second. Okay. In other words, I'm collecting a second. So is that clear on understanding this? The other thing is, there is something called, you mentioned about what is an assent as consent as opposed to what is a consent. Okay. Consent is a complete agreement, where an assent is a partial agreement. I give assent to this particular thing. That means I agree, but I may not participate. So we use something called as informed consent, which is for any studies we need that, for any ethical clearance. But an assent is something, oh, you want to conduct study on my son, do it. I'm not bothered. You give me money, I'm happy. But that does not, the son is minor, by the way. So what you have done is you have given an assent part of it, not the consent part of it. We used to use this word assent quite a lot, but now we are not using it anymore. That's why you will find in my whole presentation, I have never used the word assent. And it is deliberate. Please understand that it is in the older, and if you see the other presentation from Helsinki Declaration, all they already have assent. But in the latest ones from 2010 onwards, we have as a committee of ethical people across with WHO as a body, where I'm a member also as well. So we have stopped using the word assent. So I hope it is clear in that area. Right?
Doctor, thank you very much for the response. Now it's time for the certification, and I ask Dr. Mahar to show the certificate to Dr. Dipanjan. And until that, if there is any question from the participant, I give the second chance. If there is any.
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Dipanjan, thank you very much. That was a very nice presentation. That was very brief presentation. We thank you very much. Today's session, today's training will be end here. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I think I must appreciate all the students who have listened.
Thank you very much,
peacefully
Dr. Roy.
and, thank you very much. And patiently across. And Dr. Sudhi and Dr. Meherchand, can I share my presentation with you so that you could pass it on to the participants? They could always use it at their leisure time for this. Is it okay if I share it with you all?
Yeah, we need the material to be shared.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that they can use it. See, this is some things where we had to, the participants could use it. So see, in the 2 hours lecture, especially virtually, it's difficult to explain so many things as you could have, showed in the context. So I thought, it might be a little better option if we could share the things. I'll share it right away with
Okay.
Dr. Sudhi and others. So,
Dr. Ma.
madam, so you could kindly share it with Innocent there, and it would be kind. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
as usual.
It was a
Okay.
pleasure being with all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care.